Hello everybody, welcome to the Wonky Angle, where I talk about electronic music, both new and old. And today I'm talking about the new album from Talaboman, The Nightland. Talaboman is a duo consisting of John Talabot and Axel Bowman. Gee, I wonder where they got the band name from. Also, please excuse if I mispronounce things as usual. This review is basically another result of me having seen a band on iTunes featured page for electronic music and being intrigued by an act I'd never heard of, and from what I can tell, it only released one song prior. As I mentioned in my recent review of Visible Cloak's reassemblage, I'd been hoping to cover more debut albums from newcomer acts, so yeah. The one thing, I guess, that mainly stood out to me about Talaboman is the record label, R&S Records, who are probably best known for Aphex Twin and Selected Ambient Works 85 and 92, as well as having artists like Biosphere, Kenichi, Model 500, and a lot of others. Basically, they're one of Warp Records' big competitors from what I can tell. It's a label that helped shape early 90s techno and IDM scene. And these guys don't exactly have a long back catalog. Both of these guys have one solo album to their name and that's it. It was interesting that Talabot, whose real name is Oriol Riverola, he is Spanish, and I can't say I know any other Spanish electronic producers out there. And Bowman, meanwhile, he's Swedish. Maybe it's Bowman. I don't know. Granted, most of the Swedish electronic artists I know are not very good, like Swedish House Mafia, Avicii, Alesso. Though I do like Eric Prydz. Granted, I didn't really think these guys were likely going to sound like any of those bands. I previewed Talabot's solo debut, Finn, and found it to be very intriguing. It's got this very nice 90s rave throwback, sounding somewhere in between Disclosure and Bonobo. Very interesting mix, if I have to say so myself. And Bowman's debut album, Family Vacation, wasn't quite as intriguing, but still sounded like some pretty decent deep house sort of thing. So after that, I jumped right into The Nightland. How'd it turn out? Not bad, not bad. Admittedly, I was initially not particularly impressed, as it sounded like they were just kind of doing an artificial intelligence throwback with some occasional interesting textures. But it grew on me a little with repeat listens. When I first heard the opener, Midnattssol, I heard the African percussion, dramatic tones, Spanish-speaking samples, and one little synth riff I think borrows from Outer's Incunabula, and I was pretty excited, thinking maybe these guys are going to do some kind of IDM world music hybrid, like what Banco de Gaia did to rave and ambient house, what Thievery Corporation did to downtempo, what Spangle did to trance. Except that didn't actually happen. There were a couple of other moments on here that did something similar to what that track did, like namely the Ghost's Hood, which is also like a bit more structurally interesting and dynamic as well. But that was about it, really. The Discogs page for this album is part African style. I think they were trying to go for that given the album cover. Personally, I don't really hear it that much for the most part. A lot of it is like more straightforward deep house sort of stuff, not unlike this stuff on Bowman's solo debut, but I think fleshed out a little more. Like, for instance, when I heard the second track, Save Changes, I was immediately let down, thinking, oh, this is a really straightforward artificial intelligence throwback, nothing really interesting going on here. Though later on I ended up warming up to this one a little more, having a pretty nice melody. Samsa sounds kind of like a Monolake track that happens to have like some jingle bells and organ chord stabs. Not sure if it really justified the 10-minute length, but it was pretty good. 6 Million Ways has a rather intense and abrasive selection of synth tones, but its darker feel actually kind of makes it more engaging for me. Loser's Hymn has easily the best melody on the album. It's a very eerie track that I enjoyed quite a lot. And I like the addition of acoustic drums every now and then. And then there's Brutal Chugga Chugga, which is, quite frankly, anything but brutal. It's actually probably the most subtle track on here. The 808 beats and toned-down synth melodies almost border on sounding like vaporwave in some areas. Though there are some other synth patterns on here that make the track a bit more interesting. The closer, Dins El Lilit, to be honest, isn't anything remarkable. The main synth riff driving the song sounds pretty familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. Not a bad track, though. Still got some nice deep house synth patterns in a cold but fairly comfortable vibe. And I think that covers all the tracks, so overall, I think this album was pretty good. It didn't blow me away or anything. I think there's some neat experiments and ideas on here. I like the dark and introspective tones it focuses on, and it's got a nice variety, but to be honest, I also don't really see myself coming back to this one that much in the future either. I don't think these guys are pushing the envelope that much, and everything's pretty low-key and repetitive. Granted, being used to bands like Sounds from the Ground, I didn't find its repetitive structures to be bothersome. Much like SFTG, these tracks brought in just enough progression to hold my attention, and I don't feel like any of these tracks overstayed their welcome. I do think, however, that this album is a little more like background music for me. It's interesting, but it's not that interesting. It's adventurous, but not that adventurous. It's just a fairly enjoyable little meditative and dark deep house outing. The best moments like the opener, Loser Sim, and the Ghost Suit are quite engaging and cool. The lesser moments on here are still pretty good too. I can't say there's anything I can say I straight didn't like about this album, even though nothing really stuck out to me as amazing either. I think these guys have the potential to make some really good stuff in time if they keep pushing themselves. I don't know if they're quite there yet though. Overall though, I think I'd say this album's worth a shot. I'm overall feeling a solid 7 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but I'd like to hear your thoughts, so leave the comments in the comment thing down there. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all for today. See you next time.